Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Full Circle, the Course Ace podcast, where we talk about stuff that's going on in the tournaments. I'm this one guy hosting this week. I'd like everybody to extend their well wishes and get well soons to Kay, who is out sick this week, unfortunately. Get well soon, Kay. We'll hope to see you back soon. But we're joined this week for our discussion of the Courses Closed Finals and predictions on Grand Finals by Dio and Vorty. Good afternoon, Dio and Vorty. Go ahead, introduce yourselves, let people know who you are, what you got going on.
Good morning. I do commentary. I host tournaments. I do a couple of other things, but that's the most important things for this one. And was happy enough to cast one of the matches last week, also in the finals.
Yeah, same here. Was able to cast that one with the lovely Dio himself, and yeah, only do commentary. Dio does many more things than I do, but yeah, just comms.
All right. Well, we get some commentators from last week's matches to talk about last week's matches. So that is pretty perfect. Of course, last week we had a pretty interesting finals week. This should say finals, not grand finals. Whoopsie. It was a couple of very good matches, and well, we're gonna start off talking about those with MCY4 versus Kriller, which was our first match of the weekend, and one of the two very good matches of the weekend as well.
Yeah, this one actually started out with MCY4 being up, I think, 5-3 with an early break point. But Kriller ended up coming back, winning 4 points in a row at the end of it to clutch out the win. And a lot of these points were very close between them. One of the things that we talked about last week when doing predictions for this is that MCY4 and Kriller are relatively similar players, not the same player, but score differences under 20k on Xden, less than 100k on Miss You and DT4, less than 10k on Furiosa Melodia, less than 50k on the Nomad 1 Sozonoidea last week, and less than 65k on the Hard Rock alt pick last week. Should go to show exactly how close this match was. Not only was it 7-5, but there were also a lot of extremely close maps between these two. And I think in a lot of the places where you would expect those maps to be close as well.
Yeah, and I think a big thing for Kriller in this matchup was having the pocket over the flood pick where he just randomly gets 900 combo. And obviously, not to say that Kriller is not a good tapping player, but I don't think that's the skill set he's known for, like super dense, high BPM strain. But I think having a pick like that in a matchup that's so contested, where a lot of the picks Kriller normally wants to go into are going to be contested pretty heavily by MCY4, a lot of the techie stuff, a lot of the ulti stuff, having a speed map that you can just win because you're, honestly pretty good at it, is really big. And honestly, that makes a difference. Like, had he not had that pick, maybe goes to tiebreaker, maybe a different outcome happens. Yeah, but super close matchup. Obviously, Kriller winning 4 in a row at the end there on just nothing but close picks. Like, other than, MCY4 going crazy on, I think that's the hidden 4, or the hidden 3, sorry. Yeah, the hidden 3, like an insane FC. I think one of the few FCs of the weekend. We did not see too many. But yeah, really good done. Well done from both players, and it's an awesome hype match.
Yeah, this was like just a super fun one. I like you guys said, it was just cool to see and the match kind of went going as we expected in the sense that it was expected to be very close, and some of those skill sets were expected to be very contested. And yeah, that hidden 3 score was nuts. And then yeah, it was literally what, like 18k, 75k, 10k, 50k, like to close out the match with these maps. Um, you get into these late stages, and I think the players become separated by like smaller and smaller margins in a lot of cases. And both these guys looked very solid, very prepared, but just that late performance from Kriller in this match was super impressive. And that's what top 4 out of this one. Yeah, if I'm thinking of my bracket correctly. So
Yes,
Yeah,
top
um,
yeah.
6 for MCY4,
yeah,
top 4 for Kriller
yeah.
with the win on this match.
So a lot kind of lying in the balance on this one, and he performed well. Um, any further thoughts on this one for MCY4 now eliminated at this point, and Kriller moving on to the next one now?
I mean,
So
MCY4 just had a really good tournament, played very well. Kind of harkens back to the second place in roundtable qualifier tournament 1v1 last year that he had. Definitely a player who goes a little underrated in the tournament scene. I don't even know if underrated is the right word, but just not enough recognition for how good he is. So seeing him perform well here is great. And I think should be good to see him on a few more super teams coming up in some of the summer team tournaments.
dude, MCY4 being on a top team and like perennial and open and stuff. Let's go. I'd love to see
Yeah.
it. So the next match of the week is the somewhat sore spot, unfortunately, of the weekend. Malashevsky versus Emrek. Not going to spend too much time on the like what happens here because I think most people that are watching this probably were around, as it was occurring. TLDR, Emrek woke up pretty late, was allowed to play because it's finals week, and we would rather have a match in finals week than not have a match in finals week. Obviously, Malashevsky versus Emrek, one of the most hype matchups you will ever see in 1v1s. They've historically played some ridiculous matches, between closed round table over the past year or so. So this was just, hey, let's have a match. Obviously, Emmerich did end up getting handicapped a bit, but you know, it's something that tournaments do. Like generally speaking, there is some handicap for showing up late. But be that as it may, I think what you take away from this match is mostly that Malashevsky looked very, very strong, regardless of what Emrek was doing on the other side of the screen with his lack of a warm up. And that's kind of, I think, what we need to focus on here is stuff like this, like ludicrous Nomad 6 play, and some of his solid scores throughout the rest of the match as well.
Yeah. Emmerich just overslept and didn't show up on time. But regardless of that, like you said, Malashevsky had a fantastic showing in this matchup. Um, Scores like 730K on Tweaker DT, where you're expecting a lot of the speed players on the weekend to put up the 700K plus. He does that with 91 accuracy, by the way, just combo games his way to nearly 1400 combo on Tweaker, and ends up winning because of it. Had before a disconnect on Nomad 6, something like 400K plus was still FCing halfway through. So I don't know exactly what that score would have been, but it probably would have been top for the weekend. I don't know the other scores on that map through the weekend so far, but that would have been one of the best for sure. And then, like you said, some other really good scores through the rest of this match. 600K on the hidden 3 to close it out. Also a very good score. It was a really good match from Malashevsky. Had quite a lot of good scores through the match. Emrek did start to win some picks later on as he got warmed up in this match, but by then it was just too little, too late.
Yeah, especially when Emrek's, one of his key advantages in this matchup is going to be speed, right? It's like if you're Emrek, you have to basically FC Tweaker. Like that's kind of the expectation of a warmed up Emrek going to this matchup is just absolutely crushing the speed, which we know, like if he's peaking in solo, like Tweaker's like nothing for him. It's only 900. That's like what 600 PP away,
Only.
700 away from his still. I don't even know. The numbers are crazy, but like that's like a map he has to win. And obviously just not being warm, not having, probably being still a bit sleepy, does not lend well to speed and really showed. And then on the other hand, also obviously not being prepared on the Nomad 6 almost definitely was going to be his first ban. So losing that is pretty much just a guaranteed loss. Regardless, like still winning 3 points is solid. When you're not in the best of states, but it is a shame. It could have been a absolute heater, but that's only a what if at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think he won the points you would kind of expect him, other than Tweaker. Like his other points were on Miss UDT, which he has the only FC on, and then DT1 on Sound and Motion.
Yeah, and
Um,
Superliminal also. That
and
was actually a really good score.
Superliminal was like, I think that one's a little more of a contest, and that one was super contested. Well, they were all super contested, I guess, but yeah, it's a shame that Emrek still hasn't fixed his sleep habits. I don't know. He's been doing this for a while. You would think sooner or later, he would figure that out. But this was this was like just an unfortunate matchup to have happen, and we discussed this last week. Obviously, I don't think anybody wanted to see this match in the losers, and if it was going to be in losers in the like fifth, in like the fifth, sixth instead of in the 3-4 matchup, like one round later would have felt a little bit better. But unfortunately, this just eliminates a player like earlier than they would be anticipated to be. But it was kind of a sign of things to come, I think, for me, was seeing Malashevsky playing well in this one, because the match after this, obviously, was the two winners, Malashevsky versus Kriller. And it went how we expected it to, and I don't know what more you can really say about it than that.
I think what you can say about this one is Malice played pretty well against Emrek, but he didn't play like that much better. I think I compared, because obviously for the final statistics, right, it combines both scores from both matches. I separated the scores. It's hand calculated, so it's slightly wrong. Against Malice, against Emrek, Malice averaged somewhere in the realm of 470k, which puts him still at the best match of the weekend, like 10k ahead of worst HR, 13k ahead of enry, but not a huge gap. Against Kriller, dude, he averaged 590k. Like absolutely smoked everybody. Like it's not even close. Like for whatever reason against Kriller, he decided to toggle FC DT1, 800k on Miss You, 785k on the Cooked Nomad 3, disconnected from the tech map, getting like 720k, then ends up getting 570k, still the best score of the week. Gets cumulative 4 miss on 3 like 8 to 8.7 star maps. Like his only like decent score was on Kaiden, Extend Kaiden, but like I don't know, like the way he played in this lobby was just by far better than anybody's played in this tournament so far.
Yeah, he just popped off. Like, there's not a lot else to say, right? Like, even aside from that, you can also go through 2 miss on the Nomad 1. The map he lost, Kriller had to S rank and get over 1,000 combo in order to beat him out. And that was on the
Go on 6.
On Nomad
yeah,
6.
Nomad 6.
And that was the
Thank
best
you.
score of the week on the Nomad 6 as
Yeah.
well. So like that
Yes.
was the
So
only score that Malashevsky lost to. That variance,
yeah.
by the way, I don't mean to cut you off, but Kriller went from 337k on Nomad 6 in his first match to 579k in his second match.
Practice pays off. You get some extra practice
Wow.
in match, especially on reading picks like that, and it can really help out. But yeah, I mean, the cumulative miscount for Malashevsky on most of the maps is like 3 or under through the entirety
Yeah.
of the match, with the exceptions of the Nomad 6 and Xden in Hidden 4. So 6 out of the 8 maps that were played, he's 3 misses or fewer throughout the entire match, which is just kind of crazy, right? So yeah, he absolutely turned it on in the second match of the weekend, which of course is kind of what you expect when you have a 2-match weekend in losers bracket. We don't often see that from Malashevsky, but that's how it works for most players, Triller included. I mean, he had a lot of really good scores in this match. A lot of scores like Miss You 500k from Triller is still fantastic. Obviously, top score of the weekend on Nomad 6. 470k on the Cooked Nomad 3 is still a fantastic score. 660k on the DT1 with only a 2 miss is awesome. Like, a lot of these scores from Kriller are also really good. It's just that you're going up against somebody who is putting up best score of the weekend on a lot of these maps, right? So
Yeah.
unless you're setting best score of the weekend yourself, kind of hard to win most of those.
Yeah, if you look through the stats sheet, it's actually ridiculous, like how unfortunate Kriller was that Malashevsky is who he is. But that's like just what you get, right? I mean, it's at the point where we just like expect this sort of performance, which says a lot about Malashevsky's like just consistency at all levels, from 6-star quality, like round of 64, the round of 32 pool up to, 8.5-star finals pools. Like it's just yeah, he was just expected to play this well, so it's not a surprise that he won 7-1. Even digging into the scores, his opponent is like second best score of the week, third best score of the week, and it's just like, yeah, whatever, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say, by the way, this score on Hidden 1 in the background playing right now is one of the best like aim scores I've ever seen in a tournament. just ever, full stop.
Yeah.
2 miss on this is
Oh yeah,
absolutely cracked.
yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to shout that play out in particular. Like, yeah, first FC on DT1 is awesome. A lot of the other scores in this match are really incredible, but that 2 miss on the hidden one is one of the best scores in tournament I think I've ever seen. That map is so hard.
Yeah, also, like, I just was realizing even unluckier thing for Kriller is that he got Malashevsky twice. So
You
like,
got him
not only
twice,
did he have to
yeah.
play him in winners,
Oh
but
my
he also
God.
runs into him in losers. And he got 1 point both times.
That's unlucky.
And it's like a bad skill matchup too in terms of skill sets, right? So it's
Yeah.
like I run up against a guy who is good at this, who is like good at the same things as me except better twice in one
Yep.
tournament. But hey, shout out to Kriller, top 4.
He only lost to Malashevsky.
Only lost to Malashevsky. Right. So technically speaking, if Malashevsky ends up winning the tournament, Kriller
He got
only lost to
second.
the player who won the tournament. So
Yeah.
really he's the second best player, right? That's how
Yeah,
that
yeah,
works.
Yeah, surely.
Yeah, that's pretty unlucky. But yeah, shout outs to Kriller on a really good performance. I think really kind of came into his own. Yeah, he got an unlucky bracket in that he lost to Malashevsky twice, but he also, did a good job with the players that he beat over the course of this run, with the wins over Intercamming, Ciccone, Taquito, and then MC4. Like, that is those guys are all good.
Yep.
So big shout outs to Kriller, 4th place finish for him. Well done. Well done there. And that, of course, leaves us with one match. Last but absolutely not least, the winners final, enry versus worst HR player. And I want my freaking roses for this prediction, because I literally, if you go back to last week's VOD of this, I called this perfectly. The 7-5 worst HR player win and the exact maps that enry was going to win. Like, I had that shit nailed.
Beautiful. Like,
Congratulations.
Well executed Nostradamus
Yeah.
moment.
Congrats on the dub. Yeah, I think most of us were predicting like either enry wins and it like goes to tiebreaker or something, because we all thought it would be close, right? Last week. We were thinking like, yeah, if it goes to tiebreaker, enry probably wins, but if worst HR player wins, it's going to be like 7-5. And that's exactly what happened. Worst HR player wins 7-5. You start off with, I think, the most simple picks for both of these players. enry Nomad 5, worst HR player Superliminal. enry on Tweaker DT, worst HR player picking Nomad 3, no surprises there. And then worst HR player gets a breakpoint on Nomad 1 and wins his own pick next. And then they just keep trading picks back and forth, and enry loses the match because of one breakpoint on Nomad 1.
Can I ask, does anybody know why enry picked Nomad 1 when he had DT1 and DT4 still on the board? Do we know like what the strategy was there? Because I feel like that was a bit of a mispick. Everything else in this match made sense to me except him picking Nomad 1 when he still had 2 DTs up.
I feel like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you look at the DT4 score, for example, it's within 100K. So I don't even think that is a super good pick. The DT1 is also like 120K, which, DT multiplier is 1.2. So still relatively close. And the score difference on Nomad 1 is like 60K, not even. I feel like all of those are just very close picks and kind of hard to call. And at that, worst HR player's next pick was like an 18,000 score difference. So I think a lot of these picks just end up being very close, and it's a matter of like how personally comfortable you are on some of the maps, how confident you are picking them. Because yeah, on paper, I think you want enry to pick DT. I agree. It feels weird to see him pick Nomad 1 that early on. But if that's something that he thinks is in the cards for this match anyway, and he feels better on the Nomad 1 earlier on in the match than, say, the DT1 or the DT4, then that just ends up getting picked earlier sometimes. That's what I think is probably happening there.
Yeah. And what's cool about this matchup is you had some really high highs on their respective skill sets. Like enry crushing the speed. I think at this point it's fair to say that he's the best tapping player remaining in this tournament between these 3 players, like by quite a good margin.
That's not a question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like,
literally
like,
not.
it's like such a good, like almost FCing Tweaker. Like that's still for a lot of really proficient solo speed players. That's like a good score. That's like going to be one of their top, like, and just almost have seeing it in match, decent accuracy as well. Also, by the shout outs to worst HR player for like the tapping your grind is happening, man. 93%, 14 miss. Like, he's not that far away from being able to play this stuff pretty decently, man. Like,
that's better act than Malashevsky. Malashevsky got 91. That's better act than Malashevsky on Tweaker. So
93 means you're not mashing. You're actually like you're playing it normally.
He can't combo game, but he's got the axe. So like,
I mean, I think had the map been high BPM, less spacing, maybe something else happens. But obviously, enry on No Mod 5, not even good competition. It's just absolutely unreal. And then worst HR play on his maps, getting 776k on Superliminal is bonkers. Nobody, I think, even really got close.
No.
Who played it. Really good No Mod 3 play, just slightly beaten by Malice, but still an insane score. And only played it once versus Malice, who played it twice. And then 500k on the Hidden 2, 700k on Hidden 3, I think only beaten by MCY4. So yeah, worst HR player also had his highlights. enry as well on Exten. Like, that map, I think, might be the most cooked map in the pool, maybe to FC.
530k was the top score of the weekend. And worst HR player's 466k was number 2 of the weekend. Everyone else was below 400k on that map. So
you had some maps where the scores weren't as impressive, like on DT1, on maybe on Hidden 1, but where these players shined, they like really shined.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we talked about going into this match, and that the aspect of like their maps was why I like was kind of favoring worst HR player, because enry popping off on the speed like he did only goes so far. I mean, it was only one break point, but like a lot of the other stuff that he won on his own picks was very, very contested in comparison. But man, worst HR player just like laps the field on worst HR player maps, which is always impressive to see. I don't know. Just looking back over this MP is like actually kind of crazy, because as Dio was saying, like the first 4 picks, it's like 400k, 400k, 600k, 300k. And then the rest of the way through, it was basically all, well, DT1 was 120k, but almost everything was like pretty close. So very interesting. I'll be curious to see if enry can get back up to grand finals and make this matchup happen again, because like this is obviously super competitive, and I know he's going to want a shot at the kind of redemption. But pretty good winners final overall. I think that match and the MCY4 versus kriller match made up for the other two not being quite as compelling, perhaps. But with that, as we said, a little bit shorter this week, we are going to go ahead and move on. Now that we know who's going to be playing in Grand Finals week, we are down to 3 players. We have worst HR player, we have Malashevsky, and we have enry. So we are going to go on over to our predictions. We're going to welcome in Miles and iFlame for our usual 5-member panel for the predictions. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Please say hi, introduce yourselves. Tell us what you got going on before we start here.
Yo, what's up? I'm Miles. I'm one of the head map poolers, and I'm also a commentator for Course Ace tournaments. And I'm ready to predict this weekend. Holy crap, we've got some matches.
Yep, I'm iFlame, regular commentator for the Course Ace tournaments as well. Don't do any pooling for good reason. And occasionally, maybe once a week or so, I get a prediction correct.
Hey, I mean, one prediction can make you look pretty good if it's the right prediction. If you go against the grain and you end up getting that right, cough, you can look pretty all right.
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
It is a good feeling when you're the only person to pick somebody and you end up being right. Nah, but
I wouldn't know.
So we are gonna start off, of course, with the losers bracket final. This match is this coming Sunday, May 19th, 14 UTC. And Vorty has said that he has a lot to say about this particular matchup. So we're going to start in the middle with Mr. Vorty as our first predictor for enry versus Malashevsky. Losers final rematch of that semifinal that enry, of course, won a little over a week ago.
I'm going to try not to yap too much because I want to leave something for the other people. But I think mainly going through, obviously this matchup already happened in the semifinals. Where I think mostly predicted Malice. I think I think was it Shiba who predicted Enry? Somebody predicted Enry, I think. But obviously, Mal is probably the favorite in their first head-to-head, and Enry winning out. And I think it was a case of, Enry really good first pick on No Mod 5, wins it pretty decisively with a really nice AC FC. But other than that, most of all of Enry's wins were by a pretty small margin on DT3, small margin on the No Mod 6, breakpoint on the, I think, one of the Hard Rock 1, I believe. The hidden 2 we don't talk about, that was just a bummer. And then obviously a nice win on Easy Breezy. But all of those wins were by a relatively small margin. Meanwhile, a lot of Malice wins were like really decisive, over doubling the score on No Mod 4, pretty good margin on the DT4, really good on the No Mod 3, and like pretty solid on the Hard Rock 2. Overall, Malice's wins were just significantly more convincing across the board. Meanwhile, Enry was like, won obviously, but his wins weren't that big. Now, I do think Enry is going to have the advantage in this matchup where he now gets to play 2 real tapping maps, because DT3 wasn't really a tapping map in this pool. It was sort of like an aim consistency map with some finger control in it, which Malice could obviously play. This time, DT3 is 300 BPM, DT2 is cooked, No Mod 5 is cooked, Enry gets 2 free wins. And then other than that, Malice bans the other 2 speed maps if he wants to ban DT4, if he can't play it. And then I think Malice is advantaged on everything else. I think he's better on aim control overall, better on tech. I think he really showed his aim prowess in the last weekend, where he just got insane scores on No Mod 1, Hidden 1, scores that nobody else could really compete to the comfort of. He just doesn't seem to get tired on these long aim consistency maps. So I think Enry overall has a shot here, but I think it's a much slimmer one than in his first matchup. I think especially if Malice plays like he did against Kriller, I don't think this is going to be too close. I'm thinking like 7-4 maybe. Maybe 7-5, 7-6 tiebreaker if Malice isn't on the best day. But yeah, I think this is going to Malice, and I think it's going to be quite a tough one for Enry to pull over.
And I will mention real quick, it was Taikani who was a guest for like one episode, who was the one to predict Enry in that prediction moment. So well done to him. Hopping in for one episode, getting a tough prediction right. So that will just to clear that up. Working from let's just go center to the right. We'll go over to Miles and iFlame next to.
All right, so Enry and Malashevsky on Corsai's Closed Grand Final. If last year should be used for any precedent, on this map pool, it's a good way to predict matches is just to look at the player with the higher skill cap. I mean, Emrek just last year had so many picks that he can go to kind of as flex picks. Like the flex picks ended up really falling into his favor just because his skill cap was a lot higher than Malashevsky's at that point. But now with Emrek not in the tournament anymore, I think Malashevsky is going to be the player you look to have the highest overall skill cap. Obviously, worst HR player maps aside, it's Malashevsky who's going to be looked to be the strongest all-rounder remaining. And in terms of skill set advantages, I mean, Enry and Malashevsky, both very well-rounded players. But when you look to skill set advantages, it's going to be Enry on the speed, as Vorty mentioned, and then I think Malashevsky on the reading. I think Enry's advantage on the speed going to be a little bit higher than Malashevsky's on the reading, but still going to be very much something that I think Malashevsky might want to pick in this matchup, although maybe not as quickly as Enry's going to be going to pick the speed. But I mean, I think my prediction is just going to go off of Malashevsky, more history performing well on this kind of high star map pool. Enry maybe being a little bit skill capped or so he's claimed. But I think I'm just going to go with a gut pick here. Malashevsky probably wins this one, I think, kind of decisively. Enry will have his maps. I think I'm looking at things like DT4, probably Wind God Girl will fall his way, maybe No Mod 5, but then otherwise, I don't see too many maps where you can definitively give him an advantage over Malice if he's playing well. So I'm going to go Malashevsky 7-3 here.
Yep. I'm actually going to take Malashevsky 7-3 as well. Like you said, I do think Enry will take the tapping, but otherwise everything should be pretty Malashevsky favored in my mind. He's been so good, so consistent over the last 2 years, and even in the match that they played where Enry did beat Forum, it was Forum actually who had the higher individual, sorry, the worst HR player.
No,
who had.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, you're right. You're right. It was
I'm like, I thought
Malashevsky.
we were talking about Malashevsky.
You're right. You're right. It took me a moment. Yeah, it was actually Malashevsky who had the higher individual performance score despite losing, just because he had, as Bordy touched on, so much more dominant wins compared to Enry, whose wins were a lot closer. And especially with how difficult this pool is. We have 5 maps over 9 stars. It is an incredibly difficult pool. I think it's actually a decent bit harder than last year's Corsair's Grands, and usually MREC would be the big competitor on these really, really tricky pools that has kind of challenged Malice time and time again. But with him out of the tournament, I think Malice is by far the highest skill cap. The very difficult pool is going to favor him quite a bit, and so I think Henry has a tough road ahead of him.
All right. Well, I can go next, and
Here's
I'll be
how
the.
Henry can win.
Here's how Henry
Here's
can still win.
here's
I mean,
how Henry can
somebody's
win.
got to do it. He already beat
Somebody's
the guy
got to do it.
once.
I already prepared. I prepared to make this statement. So first of all, I think skill cap is kind of a wash this weekend.
Yeah.
There's I don't think that any of these players is going to be significantly advantaged on skill cap compared to others. When you look at how well these players have performed in other tournaments that get this high of a skill cap, the only player that really truly stands out is MREC, and that's kind of it. So I don't think there's going to be a big skill cap difference on a lot of these pools. I think the scores will be generally lower, except on the speed maps where I think Enry is going to absolutely gap, which are just Nomad 5, DT2, DT3, DT4. The other maps where I think Enry has some kind of an advantage are the Nomad 6 and Hidden 2. Obviously, I don't think that's a big advantage. I think he's slightly favored on those, but it's not by a huge amount. The thing that does give me hope for this for this matchup is that a lot of the maps that are advantage to Malashevsky are not like auto win maps. Like Nomad 2, Nomad 3, Hidden 1, Hidden 3, Hidden 4, pretty much all of the Hard Rock pool, DT1. I think these are maps that are advantage to Malashevsky, but they're far more break pointable than, say, the DT2 through 4 or the Nomad 5, right? So I think that it is possible for Enry to get a lot of those break points if he's playing well and if he has particular maps that he's got that better practice on. Maybe some of the alt picks like the Nomad 3 and the Hidden 3. Most of the Hard Rock pool is alt focused aim control as well. So if he's well practiced and feeling really good on that skill set, there's a lot of opportunities to earn those breakpoints on this pool. And I think that those are going to be doable for him. I do think he'll have a bit of a rough time picking later on into the match. It'll probably end up being, 2 out of the 4 speed maps that are available first off. And then maybe some of the reading maps or stuff like the DT1, the Hidden 1, maybe the Nomad 2 if he feels like it. But I don't really know about picking that map into Malashevsky either. Long story short, I think that this is doable because he gets some relatively free maps at the start. I think the big, freer picks for Malashevsky in this are stuff like the Nomad 4, which is just going to get banned out. So I think that there's far more tenuous picks early on in the matchup in this pool for Malashevsky than there are for Enry. And I think that kind of an advantage can help out quite a bit.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to hear you discuss that particular point because I was looking at this matchup and in a way it reminds me a fair amount of the winners final where Henry just hard wins everything speed against worst HR player. And then there's a lot of stuff that's really kind of coin toss as to who might win it after that. However, I actually think worst HR player might be better at those maps that he's advantaged on relative to Malashevsky in this matchup. Which was we saw at the beginning of that match go, worst HR player winning his first couple of picks by 300, 400K. Whereas I don't entirely know if that gap is quite as big in the matchup between Enry and Malashevsky, because while Malashevsky is super, super good at that stuff, I don't know if he's as good at it as worst HR player. That might be the only person in the world who I would say is not quite as good at those picks on. That all being said, I still think I fear the same thing can happen to enry against Malashevsky as happened to enry against worst HR player, where yeah, he wins his tapping picks pretty handily, but one slight drop on almost any of the remaining maps and he can lose it just like that. That's what Malashevsky can do to people. It's what worst HR player can do to people. And I think enry to this point has shown that a little bit less. And for that reason, I'm going to do the same thing as last week, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick, against enry. I'm going to pick Malashevsky here. I think it is probably something like a 7-4, 7-5. I would love to see this go tiebreaker. And it's weird to be openly like, hey, let's just pick against the guy who already won this matchup in the same tournament. But I think there were some extenuating circumstances in that one. And I think based on how we especially saw Malashevsky play in his second match last week and knowing what we know of him in these like grand finals level pools, I have to favor him here. So I'm going to go Malashevsky. We're going to go Malashevsky 4-1. Now, because we have fewer matches and thus more time, we are going to just go ahead and talk about both possible grand finals, because why not? We have everybody here. We have the ability to do it. I believe, but we will go ahead and start off. I don't remember how I have this set up. If we can start off with Malashevsky versus worst HR player, I'd like to, since that was who we picked to win. But if we need to start off with enry, that's fine too. So hopefully we can get switched over to that one. Yeah. Hang on one sec. Okay, never mind. All right, so we're just going to go worst HR player versus enry. I think it's just because it's the order the bracket's in, which is fine as well. So in the event that Dio's prediction comes true and enry does beat Malashevsky in the losers bracket final, our grand final would then end up being worst HR player versus. Oh, just kidding. Okay, we're switching it over. All right. So sorry about that. Because we picked Malashevsky, we're gonna talk about Malashevsky first. All right, cool. So if Malashevsky beats enry, that, oh my god.
Oh my,
We are getting trolled.
we
Being
are.
swapped back and forth a little bit.
Just leave.
All right, we'll leave it on this.
Back to
We'll leave it on
Malashevsky.
Malashevsky.
All right, we're just
Malashevsky,
gonna leave it. It's gonna be Malashevsky versus worst HR player. All right. Let's just go there. Let's go. I guess I'll just start this one because I went last before. I said previously, when the matchup was set for Malashevsky versus Emrek, that I thought the winner of that matchup was going to win the tournament, and I am just going to stick with that. I think. We have never seen this matchup before. I don't think. Not in
1v1. I don't think.
Certainly not in 1v1. I'm not even sure if it's happened in a team tournament. Somebody can do the research on that one if these guys have played each other in a team tournament before. If it has happened, I don't know when it was. And stylistically, it's a super cool one because these are probably the two best at a lot of skill sets in the world. The tech, they're obviously two of the best at. Aim control, two of the best at. Reading, worst HR player might be a little bit better, but tapping is better. I just think when it comes down to it, when you get to a grand final, if Malashevsky is involved, I will literally never bet against him. I don't care who he's playing against other than Emrek in a 9-star pool. That might be the only case. But against literally anyone else, it's just Malashevsky. I think worst HR player will put up some super great scores because there are some decent maps for him, but Malashevsky wins on pure speed because he's able to play it somewhat competently. Malashevsky wins on stamina because he is able to play that competently, and they're roughly equal on enough other stuff that I think he finds like a break point. Or if it goes to tiebreaker, I think he just wins tiebreaker. Actually, I don't know who wins tiebreaker. Now that I'm saying that, I forgot what this map is, but that would be a super close one. Can they just go to tiebreaker? Let's just go straight to tiebreaker. Anyway, I'm predicting Malice to win because I can't predict Malice to lose. And then we'll just work our way over. We'll go Dio and just work our way to the end.
Yeah, I feel a little similarly, and in my head, I think I want to go Malashevsky, but I also am looking at this pool, and the Hard Rock pool in this map pool is so ridiculously good for worst HR player that I have a hard time thinking it's just gonna be kind of freelo. The DT pool is Malashevsky dominated. The Nomad pool, I think, is mostly toss-ups outside of the Nomad 2 and Nomad 5. The hidden pool is Hidden 3 is favored to worst HR player. Hidden 4 is favored to Malashevsky. Hidden 1, Hidden 2, I think are mostly toss-ups. Hard Rock 1, I think, is kind of a toss-up. I think either player can win that. But then, there's enough in this Hard Rock pool where, with how many toss-up maps there are, I feel like there's good enough picks for both of these players through the rest of the pool that I don't know. It feels really doable for either of them. All right, headcanon. It's worst HR player gets all information on exactly how good Malashevsky is from a close match with Enry, and is able to compare scores directly on a lot of the kind of toss-uppy maps in the pool, stuff like the lower approach rate reading maps, stuff like the aim maps in Nomad Hidden Hard Rock, although the Hard Rock map is not really an aim map, and is able to pick better in this matchup, and can use enough of the alt maps in the pool, plus some of those more toss-uppy maps to win in the first round. I think that if this goes to a bracket reset, you probably see enough good bans from Malashevsky and enough good picks later on, leaning into a lot of the stuff that he just has a straight up advantage on. The Nomad 2, the Nomad 4, the Nomad 5, the entire DT pool, and probably Hidden 4, I think are going to be great picks for him. So I feel like a lot of these toss-up picks have to be won by worst HR player, but it's doable. And if something like the Nomad 4 gets picked, is it likely that the worst HR player wins that? No. Is it doable compared to stuff like the Nomad 2 and the Hidden 4 or the Nomad 5? Yeah, more doable than those. So I'm gonna say 7-5 worst HR player just for the fun. I don't actually know how this matchup goes. In my head, it says Malashevsky, but I think it would be the more interesting outcome for worst HR player to win. So that's what I'm going to say.
That's actually funny. I originally thought this was going to be 4 Malices, and then I would go for him. But I'm keen to see Dio's on the same wavelength. I actually think that originally I was like, yeah, sure, Malice wins this one, right? For all the obvious reasons of how good he is, how well he played against, Kriller, his basically top scoring, I think, every weekend other than semifinals, which he probably would have top scored if he got to finish the Hidden 2 play. And also the speed advantage here. But I think, first of all, as you mentioned, this Hard Rock pool is the most worst HR player build Hard Rock pool I think I've ever seen. Hard Rock 2, 3, and 4 is all him. Hard Rock 1 is obviously more contested, but the 2, 3, and 4 is just insane for him. Just so much aim control, juice, and that Hard Rock 2 is Malice might even have to ban it depending on how he feels on it. But this is the secret trap card I think worst HR player has. And Malice, I hope you're not here because I don't want you to listen to this. I need this to come to fruition. Worst HR player first ban, something like Nomad 5 or DT2, something obvious. Malice bans some cook reading map and then picks the other 2 stream maps. And then worst HR player leaves DT3 open after the second round of bans. Malice is what the hell?
Real and true.
And then worst HR player deep into the match when it's very close, picks DT3, the 300 BPM map, double taps it like a fiend, because lest you forget,
it's doable.
This man FC'd Ascension to Heaven, double tapping it, which is a 300 BPM Deathstream map. Now, I think the big asterisk on Wind God Girl, there's a lot of triple spam, and I don't think double tapping helps you as much on triple spam. But if he can hit the triple spam, he wins. Because Malice isn't going to be able to play the 300 BPM, and worst HR player can actually double tap it. So just having that in his back pocket, potentially, I think could be the deciding factor. Now, if Malice wins the first bracket reset, he probably wins the second one. But it's kind of a situation where worst HR player gets 2 rolls at the dice. Even if they're weighted towards Malice, only one has to hit. For Malice, both have to hit. So he has that advantage. So unironically, I'm going for him. I think worst HR player, with how good he is at his aim control, with how much aim control there is in the pool, with the secret double tapping on DT3 tech, I think this could definitely go in his favor.
I forgot to put Wind God Girl into my calculations. You're so right about that. And I'm actually now unironically, worst HR player wins. Let's go. Let's see it.
Oh, that's really funny because Vorty, I was actually in the exact same thought camp as you there. I was like, everyone here is gonna say Malice, but actually, Forum, I think, has an advantage on this map pool, genuinely. It's like, as Aaron mentioned earlier, like the maps that worst HR player wins, he runs laps around the competition on them. And I think he is completely unmatched when it comes to aim control. And I think that gives him a really big advantage at some of the more contested picks in the pool. Looking at maps like Nomad 3, probably Hidden 3, those are things that, while being contested, I think they fall more in his direction. Where we saw that last year against MREC, we saw a lot of tech picks fall into MREC's court, even though that's a very contested skill set, just because MREC, has a little more juice in the tank on that skill set, maybe, while Malice is probably more consistent on the maps he can play. It's just so hard that it might be out of his wheelhouse. And that's really going to be the big question for this match is, can Malice really take some of these contested maps? Because that's where it's going to be determined. Like, I really like Malice on DT1 and DT2, Nomad 2 and Nomad 5. Those are going to be guaranteed wins, and probably Hidden 4 as well at Stream Tech. So Forum has to ban those out. DT4, probably Malice. But then the Hard Rock pool is what everyone's talking about. And as the pooler, I completely agree that 2-3-4 is just so good for Forum. And I think the contested maps, like Forum has been so clutch this tournament. He's been winning contested maps by small margins. And that, in my opinion, will continue here. So I'm going to go Forum here 7-5, as people have been saying. It's going to be a close one. I agree with the sentiment of if Malice takes it to bracket reset, he probably wins it all. But also, like, it's the contested maps, man. Like, whichever direction those fall in, it's just determines the whole chess match for this match, because they each have guaranteed picks. But like a 5K difference on a map, a break point, completely swings the entire match in my eyes. It will be one break point to determine this.
Yeah, I certainly was not expecting this many worst HR player predictions. I thought we'd have a lot more Malice predictions as well, but I would generally agree with what you guys have said so far about the pool being incredibly favorable for a worst HR player. If there was ever a pool to beat Malashevsky on, it would be this one. We've already talked about the Hard Rock pool, those contested picks. So I won't go over those again. But I do think this is certainly worst HR player's best shot. The other thing that I think T1G touched on very briefly is that Malashevsky has to play enry in the grand finals losers bracket before playing worst HR player, assuming he wins. And so worst HR player is going to have a lot of extra information to work off of. At the very minimum, you'll have, I think, 11 maps worth of information, 7 picks, and 4 bans, and possibly more, depending on how many points enry can win. And I think that information is going to help out worst HR player a lot. And so I will say worst HR player is going to take the first match, but I think that Malashevsky, after losing the first match, is going to take the bracket reset. I think.
Wait,
Malashevsky
it
is
doesn't
in
work
losers,
that way.
Malashevsky's
right?
coming
No.
from
It
losers.
doesn't work that way.
It-
Malashevsky's in losers. He
Yeah.
has to win both.
Oh, you're right. All right. I can't cook then. I just have to take Malashevsky.
This guy forgot how a bracket works.
Yeah.
He's the
Ugh.
Malashevsky.
Little unlucky.
I'm not
He's gonna
used to
lose, but then
Malashevsky
he's gonna win
being
the
in
bracket
losers.
reset anyway.
Guys, I'm not used to Malashevsky being in losers bracket. It
So
doesn't
who do you
feel
like?
right.
That
It
is
doesn't
fair.
feel
I
right.
will give you that.
In that case, I just can't bet against Malashevsky in the end. I'm gonna have to change up my prediction. And yeah, Malashevsky. I'll say in tiebreaker though. I think it's gonna be incredibly
Back-to-back
close.
tiebreakers.
Cool.
Malashevsky
Back-to-back
7-6.
tiebreakers.
Back-to-back
yeah.
tiebreaker, the script.
Dude.
Grand
Yeah.
finals now.
Great
Grand
guys,
finals
man.
takes 4 hours. Let's go.
Let's go,
Let's
dude.
go.
Hey, it's 1v1. That's like 2.5.
Yeah,
That's
it won't be
doable.
that bad. Can
Yeah.
I just say, like, this is like a side note, but I mean, like, whatever, we've got the time for it. Can I just say, like, I think info is super overrated. I actually don't think
I
it
do
makes
think that also,
nearly
yeah.
as big a difference as people think it does, because, like, scores can vary by literally 300K from one day to the next, like, without a second thought. Like, it just
Yeah.
happens. I really don't think information is as big a deal as people make it out to be, especially when you are in a 1v1 involving players whose skill sets are already super well known. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like, I personally don't think information is that big a deal.
Listen, I completely agree. Had to find some excuse to switch up my prediction for that second reset, which didn't happen. So, you know, I played myself a little bit, but that's how it goes.
Congratulations, you played yourself. All right, so we've got Forum though in this one by 3-2 in the Malashevsky matchup. Now, I'm a little surprised to see Forum in like the first 1v1 he's ever played, favored in the grand finals over the greatest tournament player of our generation. But here, well, most consistently greatest, I guess. The MREC probably has the higher like ceiling, but whatever. Anyway, but I guess we'll have to see how that one goes.
I can flip flop my vote. Screw
Right,
it. Put me on for
like-
Malashevsky. Like, put me
I
back.
feel like
Committed
I feel
now.
like
Put me
any of
back.
us could argue one way or the other in this one because this matchup is so good. But we of course do have the other potential matchup. So if Enry repeats his performance from the winners bracket semifinals, beats Malashevsky a second time, which very few people can claim to have ever done, it would instead in the grand final be Enry facing off against worst HR player. And I started the last one. Vorty got to start one. I don't know. Somebody, whoever wants to go first can go first here.
It's all right.
I can start with this one.
All
I
right.
think, I mean, I don't want to reiterate too much from what we said in the previous prediction, but again, this pool, very worst HR flavored. Generally, Enry has the edge on Hard Rocks in my mind, but because the Hard Rock pool specifically is just so good for a worst HR player skill set, I think that's going to be a massive edge for worst HR player that Enry can't count on that he would have been able to in previous pools. We saw this matchup just last week, 7-5 for worst HR player. I do think the skill cap will probably be negligible, but and Enry will take the speed, so I think Enry can certainly take some points. But there's just not enough tapping, fast tapping for Enry to take enough points off a worst HR player, right? Usually he can rely on the hard rock picks for some extra points, coin flip some of the nomads. This week doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. It's tapping, and then you kind of just have to go into the nomad coin flip picks in my mind. And so I'm going to give it to worst HR player, maybe 7-4.
You know, I made the points for Forum earlier against Malashevsky. I think Enry actually optically has more definitive picks against Forum than Malashevsky does because he, for one, has complete control of the double time pool this time. You don't need to worry about getting DT double tap cheesed on Wind God Girl if you're Enry, I think. But at the same time, I think the toss-up picks that Malashevsky had, Enry is not going to have as easy of a time on. It's like Nomad 2, Nomad 5, Hidden 4, and the DT pool. And then outside of that, it's going to feel really tough for Enry in this matchup, I think, outside of those picks. So I'm going to once again go for him here. I'm going to go 7-5 repeat score because Enry is a strong player. And I mean, if he wins this, that means he got over Malashevsky. That's like a perennial hurdle for Enry. I know he was not satisfied with the way he won it earlier. He's going to want to go really hard and win the matchup against Malashevsky here again, this time in the grand finals. And if he can get over that, he's definitely going to have the fuel in the tank to be able to put the hurt on Forum. But nonetheless, I still feel like just the depth of picks that Forum has, like the way that he's able to navigate this matchup with things like, I think, aim falling in favor of Forum in this matchup, it's going to be an uphill battle for Enry if this matchup does occur. But nonetheless, if it does happen, that would be a sick match.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a close one, and it's largely off the virtue that Enry is going to have, I think, like 3 freebies. Because there's no mod 2, because, for example, against Malashevsky, no mod 2 is not like a... Malashevsky can stream 222, so that's not a problem. And Malice has incredible flow aim, so that's not like a free pick. Against worst HR play, I don't think he's as comfortable at that BPM. So that means there's no mod 2, no mod 5, DT2, DT3, and DT4 that are all going to be almost definitely Enry advantage. And I also do agree, I don't think the double tap dream back pocket strat's going to work against Enry because he can just probably play it normally and then get really good at and just win off consistency. So 3 wins for Enry is pretty big. I also think worst HR player is going to have enough maps that it'll probably like start 3-3. because you have the 3 in Hard Rocks, you have the Hidden 2, you have the Nomad 6, you have techie stuff like Nomad 4, which whereas the Char player hasn't been like as dominant on the Nomad 4s as, for example, Malice, but still probably advantaged. I think once it goes like 3-3, I think it's a toss-up after that, but I think it's in favor of Worst HR. And after that, it's like Worst HR player just needs to win one of these 2 matches to win. Bracket resets big. I think it's gonna be a close one though, but I'm gonna go for Form again.
I think this is like less of a matchup where there are toss-up maps than Malashevsky versus Worst HR player. On enry's side, I think obviously it's been said before, Nomad 2, Nomad 5, Hidden 4, and I think the entirety of the DT pool, I don't even think you exclude DT1 on that. It's a 9.5 star, 290 BPM, like a map. That is not something that Forum is going to be good at. Just full stop. Even looking at the scores from last week, Enry beats him on DT1 last week. So just those alone are 7 picks where you have Enry just straight up advantaged. At the same time, there's also probably about 7 or 8 picks where Forum is just straight up advantaged. Nomad 3, Nomad 4, Hidden 1, Hidden 3, Hard Rock 2 through 4 is at least 7 of them. And then I think you probably give him the Nomad 1 as well. I don't know if I already said Hidden 1, but I think you probably give him the Hidden 1 and the Nomad 1 as well, just based off of how last week went for some of those maps. So I think there's about the same amount of really good picks for either player in this match. The toss-up maps I think we do have are the Nomad 6, Hidden 2, and Hard Rock 1. I don't know who's actually better on that. Maybe Worst HR player is better on that. But I think this is like extremely winnable for either player. I'm gonna go Enry because I think there's a lower chance of Enry dropping breakpoints on Nomad 2, Nomad 5, and the entire DT pool, and there's a bigger chance of Worst HR player dropping breakpoints on stuff like the Hidden 3, which is a minute and 22 seconds, or the Nomad 4 or Hard Rock 4 that are 2 minutes each, right? I think that those types of picks, just due to the nature of aim being more accessible than speed for a non-aim player versus a non-speed player, are more breakpointable for Enry in this matchup. And one other thing, I think if it gets to tiebreaker, I favor Enry on it because it is almost all high BPM. So let's go double 7-6 tiebreaker win for Enry here also.
Ooh,
Dude.
Ooh.
And
damn.
here's how Enry can win.
Here's how Enry can.
And here's how Enry can win.
There's how Enry can still win. Down there. It's basically already been said. This is the downside of being last here. But I view this basically as a very similar situation to the winners bracket final, and a similar situation, but kind of trending the opposite direction as the Worst HR player versus Malashevsky matchup, where yes, the maps that Enry wins, like Forum literally has no point of entry into whatsoever. There is never a chance in the world. I'm picking Tuna, apparently. There's never a chance in the world where Worst HR player beats Enry on any of the tapping stuff in this pool at all. Like, I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. But again, much like in the winners final, I think those remaining maps that we consider a toss-up, whereas in the Malashevsky matchup, I would give those like at worst a 50-50. Certain of them may favor ever so slightly to Malashevsky. In this one, I would give that same amount of favor over to Worst HR player instead. So where I end up picking Malashevsky against Worst HR player for the exact reasons, the opposite direction, basically, I end up picking Worst HR player over Enry. Enry will, worst case scenario, probably get 4 points, maybe 5, because of there being like 6 tapping maps in the pool. But so much of the other stuff is either a toss-up or something that's good for Worst HR player, that I think much the way he did in the winners bracket final. I think he wins this theoretical matchup in a very similar 7-4, 7-5 fashion. But I think regardless, it's going to be close, right? I think we're pretty much in agreement there. Like, both of these matches should be pretty close. On paper, they look very competitive.
Just pick all the Toho maps. DT3, Hidden 3, DT4 will bring you to salvation.
Yeah, not sure about that one, but looks like we do have.
You don't get
looks
it.
Like,
You don't
looks
get
like
it.
looks like we've got Forum.
Mm.
Anyway, I don't get it. You're right. I'm not a Toho fan. I'm sorry. Just not really my. I haven't dived down that particular rabbit hole.
No, you don't get the
But
hidden 3. That's what you don't get.
that's fine.
It's flow aim. It's hidden flow aim. It
It's
could
hidden
drop
flow aim.
anyone's
Look, flow aim
way.
doesn't mean anything anymore, bro. I go into a map pool feedback channel. I search flow aim, and there's 152 results. Like, man, what
Real.
is flow aim? What is flow aim?
The snow mod 1 is pretty flow aim heavy, guys.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
this-
be honest. So it's a flow
Where's
map.
the data image? Where's the data image? Somebody find me the data image.
Look, man. The only pick I care about is worst HR player picking peanut butter jelly time Hard Rock
Oh.
2 and setting the best tournament play you've ever seen in your life. That's the
Yo,
only thing I'm hoping for.
Low key,
I hope that gets picked.
Low key,
True and real.
Malashevsky plays like circle size adjustment maps on what's it called, on Mikosu, right? Like he plays like CS7 stuff for fun and FC's ridiculous maps. So I could see that just getting played and actually being competitive if that ends up happening there. That would be kind of cool. I don't know. But that's gonna do it, I think, unless anybody has any final thoughts on either the matches that are remaining. I think we've pretty much covered it all.
Not
Mm,
about
good.
the matches themselves, but just as a reminder for everyone who doesn't know, our first losers bracket match is going to be 14 UTC Sunday. Because of scheduling conflicts, the winners grand finals are going to be 13 UTC Saturday next weekend. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I believe we'll have a scheduled graphic at some point in the near future. That'll be up on the Twitter account. But yes, thank you, iFlame. 13 UTC the week after. But hey, each match gets an entire weekend to itself, so we get to build the extra hype up because as we expect, it's Corsairs closed. The last weekend is always a good one. But that is going to do it for us here today at Full Circle. Big thank you to Dio40 Miles and iFlame for being on the show this week. To everyone, we will see you all Sunday, 19th of May at 14 UTC. Malashevsky versus enry, the rematch, and then the weekend after, grand finals as we wrap up Corsairs closed once more. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you guys this weekend for the match in the losers bracket and next week for grand finals. Hope to see you there. Peace out.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye.